able to save a lot on local transportation as we use our feet for everything. One of the challenges with budgeting is estimations on enrollment and how many students that you need at a minimum, what your ideal number of students are, and how to sort of plan ahead for the kinds of contingencies that you might have with the student enrollment.
And also, it's very important to know where you are going, because the prices vary for everything, from place to place, from date to date. For example, we know that at the end of May is ideal for walking in Florence. Unfortunately, in Florence they have their medieval soccer play festival, so there is no place to stay, and if you find one, it's triple the price. So we have to know that, wait for the festival to either end or catch that weekend when we can actually reserve our spot. So it's a combination of that, the student number and also the place itself. You need to know a little bit the logistics of the place.
What Laura mentioned was that RJ Podesky had created a spreadsheet template that you can use for your budget, and I have a few flyers there on the table. There's a QR code. If you want to scan it, it'll take you to a copy of the blank template so you can make a copy for yourself and start inputting things. But the nice part about that template is it allows you to do what Katie just mentioned, which is put in what you'd like to do, set a price that you think students can afford, and then see how many students you would actually need to participate in order to cover all of your costs and to bring some of the larger group costs down. I would say one of the other things then is, for me, we tend to budget for the absolute bare minimum amount of students we can travel with, and then if we happen to get lucky and get several more, then we start kind of adding in other pieces. But we design the syllabus around knowing this is the bare minimum of things we're going to be able to do and they're going to be able to interact with. So my advice is mostly just to budget for things you don't expect, and especially if you're traveling internationally, you've got to think about how the exchange rate is going to change, because right now, you know, the dollar looks beautiful against both the pound and the euro, and it might not in June. So you just have to kind of build in that flexibility.
I've been pretty lucky, actually. I haven't had to create a budget. It's just sort of given to me. The London semester is probably the most challenging thing to budget for. But again, I just get told, and buy tickets for 15 plays, and get, you know, reserve buses for your trip from London to Liverpool or from London to Oxford. So, but that sort of segues into, you know, think about what it is you want to do. You know, we're in England for a whole semester, so London is obviously the biggest draw, but we go to Oxford, we go to Bath, we go to Liverpool, we've gone to Birmingham. So, you know, the idea, if you have enough students to do that, you're generating enough tuition revenue, you have a lot of the luxury of doing a lot of the things you want to do. So planning for a semester is a little bit different, but I just want to add to, on the shorter trips we've gone, we've totally spoiled ourselves, and we've always stayed in hotels, so we haven't done the hostel thing.
What is the most challenging part once you're actually there and in the trip?
I guess we go this way. Keeping people happy. You know, and again, I'll speak from the semester in London. I guess for about 10, 12 years, I'm not sure how long, we were staying at a place in Earl's Court. And
we're still in Earl's.
Sorry?
We're still in Earl's Court.
Are we still in Earl's Court? Oh, nice, because it has a little classroom in the back.
Yeah.
But with the, you know, so yeah, it's great, right? It's really convenient. It's a really nice neighborhood. But the rooms are a little bit moldy, and the showers are a little bit small, and yeah, so trying to, you know, talk people down off the ledge, like, this is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Yeah, there's a little mold, but, you know, just, you know, maybe, you know, they don't.
You're
have
in
to
London, so stop complaining.
It's damp. It's England. It's damp. It's going to be damp. And then there's also, a lot of interpersonal stuff. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. I haven't had to break up any fist fights, but we have had to send one student home 1 year. So one of the most challenging parts is hoping that the kids actually get along with each other.
Brianna and I would hear about complaints about the London
Yeah,
digs,
yeah.
and then she and I went to a conference that one of our partner schools did, where we shared a res hall room in the Netherlands, where the bathroom was about the size of half of this table. And it made us a little less sympathetic to their complaints. I have to admit that. I think one of the things that is so very different from traveling with students and doing a course and just teaching your regular courses, which is one of the things that I find most challenging, is that you guys you're together basically 24/7. And they're always there, and they're always watching what you're doing, and they're always together with each other too, within the student groups too. So any kind of interpersonal thing where some people might not get along on a team in class, well, it's 3 hours a week out of their week, and they can go back to their room and they can be on the phone, and they can video chat with somebody and complain about it, and it's not the same when you're abroad, especially when you're talking about 7-8 hour time difference, and they can't just hop on and like I said, complain to a friend, vent. But that idea that everything that you're doing, they're watching, and so often what you're doing as a faculty member is not just teaching your course content, but you're teaching them how to travel, and you're teaching them how to overcome unexpected obstacles. That isn't in the syllabus, right? But like a lot of things that most of us weren't taught how to teach, because we were just taught our subject area, it's something you've got to be just prepared to do and kind of learn on the fly.
I think I'll start by co-signing everything that everyone has said so far. Walking in Florence is offered in the summer, and it is hot in Italy in the summer, and that is a challenge. Apartments rarely have air conditioning. We stay in non-air conditioned apartments in the old part of the city. Often the apartments will be on second or third floor with no elevator. And so living accommodations are indeed a challenge. What I think is a bigger challenge that we've encountered is no matter how much you prepare students for cultural difference, once you're there, you have to be ready to support those students as they actually experience those cultural differences. It is hot in Florence, and Italians dress differently for heat than Americans do. And so our students will select very beautiful outfits, very fashionable, stylish outfits that are not appropriate to be wearing in churches, where the expectation is that your shoulders, your midriff, and your knees are covered. And so we can prepare students all day long for weeks ahead of time, but we also have to be ready with the scarves and the wraps to make sure that our students can enter the sites that we want to visit. We have to prepare students for that surprise when they encounter someone different from them, who might be shocked by the way they dress or by the way that they behave or speak, that might be acceptable in the United States but isn't acceptable in Florence. And so that's a challenge, and it's something that you can't necessarily prepare for as faculty. You simply have to be ready to be flexible and provide that support for your students in the moment, on the fly, as they need it.
I agree with everything that has been said. Probably the most challenging part is the plan for the unplanned, the unpredictable. And as Katie said, it's you have one group of students here, and once you are there's a second group of students there. So the students that you knew home, they're not the same students that travel, right? So, and that goes for us too. When we travel, we are different people, right? We are not the same people as home. We think we are adjusting to what we find, right? So with experience 4 summers in Florence, I have a list of things that I am prepared for, and I keep adding to that list things that I did not know I should be prepared for. So we have surprises every summer, but I think there are fears, and we share these fears with our students. You cannot lose your passport. you cannot do this, right? So there are certain things that we turn into parents, but for other things we let them, you know, deal with their broken shower. Or you cannot turn your air conditioner to 60 degrees or Fahrenheit or 50. No, it doesn't go. After 2 hours it turns off. It has a thermostat, there's a global warming. You cannot do that. Or if you take an hour in a shower, you do not have hot shower. You have to speed up, 15 minutes shower, okay? So by the end of the first week, I think complaints start it's really called walking in Florence, so complaining about how much they walk every day.
Right, because you can prepare them for the clothes, but they don't believe
No.
about the footwear.
No,
right?
they don't. They
Yeah.
don't. Yes, yes. So, but it's getting better. They are coming without a luggage that is almost taller than me.
Thought about changing the title of the course to "Walking a Lot."
No, the subtitle with an asterisk, and it goes to the bottom. It says, a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the walking thing, the students aren't used to backpacking and carrying, because we go to 4 countries, and so they definitely were not ready for carrying their suitcases to lots of different places. For me, I think the biggest was that they experienced culture shock. We were just there for 3 weeks, and so I was like, we'll be fine, it's okay. But they weren't ready for me speaking numerous foreign languages. I speak Latvian and Russian to people, and they thought when I spoke Russian I was constantly yelling at people, because Russian is a harsh language, right? And you know, so they were like, why is Dr. Dean always angry? And I'm like, well, I'm just speaking Russian. Anyway, so yeah, and then there was a time where they thought I was talking about them, and like I would be asking for directions, and so like the culture shock of like hearing their professor, who they've heard their whole life apparently only speak English, go and speak other languages to people, and them not knowing what I was saying, and like, I don't know, thinking I'm planning a coup or something. It was kind of surprising to me, because I mean, they all know I speak other languages, but it may be on the ground, you know, hearing me yell at people in Russian, but not really yell at people in Russian, was surprising. So yeah, the culture shock, like, one thing that I think I'm taking students again this summer, I'm definitely gonna have, like, if you need a mental health day and you don't wanna come with us today or in the afternoon, I'm implementing that before I force them to come to everything. But I'm definitely not gonna do that, because sometimes you need a break from people, and sometimes just having an afternoon off to yourself in the hostel, right, is kind of what people need to like really, you know, recharge and reset their mental health. So I think the culture shock and the interpersonal issues, which everyone has stories about when you take students abroad, were 2 of the things that I found the most challenging. And I should say, I took students by myself, so that was also one thing this year I'm taking another faculty member with me, so kind of working through all of that as a single person there by myself was a lot, and including being tour guide, travel agent, things like, you know, translator, things like that, all of that was a lot, so.
Oftentimes faculty are unable to get students to sign up for their courses whenever they want to travel. How did you guys get students to travel and consistently are able to get students to go abroad with you?
I mean, clearly I'm delightful, so traveling with me for 3 weeks, amazing. I mean, for me, honestly, it's price point, because we do stay in hostels and we backpack around. My trip for 3 weeks is $2,500 without the airfare. But yeah, so I think price point has been the biggest, you know, recruitment tool. Like, come on my program, you can study for 3 weeks in Eastern Europe cheaper than you can go to Costa Rica for 1. So yeah, so I would say, and price point is like one of the biggest impediments, I think, to many students studying abroad. And so I would encourage you to try to keep your trip as cheap as possible. And then I also start talking to students about it, like literally every advising appointment. I'm like, oh, do you want to study abroad or study in Washington, D.C.? Tell me about it. How can we make that possible? And even if they don't want to come on my program, right? Promoting other people's programs, I think, is important too. So I always am asking people and advising. I'm talking to my classes about it. I talk about living in other countries and things like that. So I think all of that kind of primes students for wanting to take people along. And then this time, because I'm taking a second faculty, I think that helps, right? Because 2 of us, if we just recruit 4 people, which our trip is already made for the summer, it's, yeah, taking another faculty and having that extra recruiting partner is a good enticement to get students to come.
Yeah, all that, talking about it. We also plan somehow to talk about Florence from,
Are you guys going this summer?
we are
We are
not
not
going
going
this
this
summer.
You sound almost convinced.
Yes, we are trying to convince each other
Okay,
that
okay,
this is
alright.
not happening. So we are not going this summer, but we plan in the future to come back to traveling, to walking in Florence. But another thing is talking to students and also having meetings with them, with flyers, and we tell everyone, and they come. Sometimes we buy pizza and just.
Can I interrupt real quick? My recommendation is to teach a course and have a travel component to that course. That saves the students $1,500. So next time for sure.
We are learning from Dr. Dean here. Yes. But also talking to students about how important it is. I keep telling them it doesn't matter if I'm going or not to Florence this summer. I always tell them, go ask. You need to go somewhere in these 4 years or 2 years when you are here. It doesn't matter, just find something. But I don't have money. Go and ask, how can you travel abroad? There are possibilities. And there is also this myth that is expensive, is not for me, I will never make it, right? So most of our students, right, we had students, they never left Illinois, right? So they ended up in Florence.
Walking in Florence, of course, is its own class. It doesn't have a classroom component to it during the regular semester. That said, Merle and I both incorporate elements of Florentine culture and history into our courses. So Walking Florence seems like an extension. Our class is special in particular because of the phenomenology of getting to see the objects that we study in class in person. It's one thing to look at a picture of a painting or to listen to a recording of an opera. It's another thing to be present in front of that painting or that sculpture, or to be present in the space where that opera premiered 400 years ago. And those kinds of experiences can't be replicated in any other way. And so we get students excited about the course in our classrooms. We get them excited to come to our meetings, and then everything goes from there.
I think one of the things you have to think about is how you can make your course appeal to a broad group of students. And so things like working with Morella and formerly Katie to get ICS approval on a course, or working to get IN 350. If you've got something that satisfies the university studies requirement, you aren't relying on just the students you see in class. I think that gets to be really important. I do think that sometimes we feel bad about mentioning the travel pieces because we do know that it can be expensive for students, and so sometimes I think we self-monitor and don't talk about the programs enough because you have to remember it's not a decision the students are going to make the first time they hear it. It's got to kind of settle in with them. They've got to feel confident that they can talk to their families about it or go talk to financial aid and see how their package works and all of those things. So you've got to give them time to process, which means they need to hear it from you more often than you probably are comfortable talking about it. We saw a huge difference in the ability to even promote our domestic Disney class last year because I was on sabbatical in the spring and RJ was dean and was only teaching a 1-credit course. So the lack of time in front of the students just mentioning the opportunities really kind of cut into that. And I will mention, Brianna was saying that if you've got the opportunity, some of your deans will approve, possibly, the idea that you're going to teach a regular fall or spring course with then a travel component. And so like a fall course with January travel or a spring course with summer travel. And again, that's not a guarantee you're going to get to do it. Laura tried it for several years before she got the green light. Yeah. But because the course component is built into their regular tuition payment, then the only budget they've got to think about is the actual travel contract. So there's no guarantee you can do that, but it's worth trying.
Gazi and I actually did do a semester-long course. This is the infamous Scandinavia course, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we co-taught semester-long course with a travel during spring break, except it was spring break 2020. And we left Milliken on like March 5th. And Ngazi gets in the middle of the night about a week later, call from Brianna. We were in Norway at the time. You guys have to leave the country as soon as possible. So, so even when you have a course with a nicely packed in spring break travel thing, you have to be prepared for the unpreparable, like COVID. And so, yeah, so we suddenly got like the last plane out of Oslo, and we went to England instead of Denmark. So even again, with the best laid plans. Oh, and then of course the best part was, you remember those news segments about O'Hare? March 14th, 2020, that was us. We were there. So it can work as long as a pandemic doesn't hit. Yeah. But otherwise it was a great idea. Yeah. I mean, otherwise it was a great idea, you know, because then you don't have to worry about January, you don't have to worry about May. It's right there. Spring break was perfect. We left a couple days early. We would have come back a couple days later. So it's a good slot to use.
Okay, I'll ask one more question, and I'll let other people ask, and I'll let you guys kind of mention maybe what you want to that I haven't asked. And that is, what is your like biggest rookie mistake from your first trip?
My biggest rookie mistake was not communicating enough with the people I was going to be working with in London. I missed, I should have talked more ahead of time with the local adjunct who we were working with. I should have talked more ahead of time with the people at the Globe Theatre, because I made some scheduling mistakes based on what I thought was going to happen, and I was wrong. So basically communicate with the people in the country where you're going.
I will say mine is is forgetting that the students haven't traveled as much as I have. So somebody else has mentioned some of them have never been out of the state before. This could be an international trip, maybe their very first plane ride in some cases. And so not knowing how to pack, not knowing what to expect going through TSA, not knowing that, you know, you're gonna have to wheel that suitcase all the way through the airport, which is gonna feel like 7.5 miles, and then be able to heft it onto a bus, and then, you know, fight to maneuver it on, you know, the metro, and then, you know, all of these things that, like, you say the words to them, but they have got no meaning, no practical meaning for the students because they don't have experience in that. And so taking about 17 steps back and going, all right, let's talk about what to pack and what to expect. And again, no question is a dumb question with this because it's just about you not having experience with it.
I had the blessing of stepping into a pre-designed and pre-tested course as Walking in Florence was offered before I began teaching at Millikan. So I'll take a different perspective on this question to what was, I guess, my rookie mistake, imagining what the experience would be like, and say that it's so important not to over-plan or to fill the schedule with 100 things. There needs to be space for contingencies, like the museum's not open on Tuesdays. Tuesday really fits our curricular narrative, but we're gonna have to move it to another day because they're not open, or they're sold out of tickets, or there's a saint feast day and it's in effect a municipal holiday and everything is closed. And so there has to be room for accounting for those kinds of things. There needs to be room for the students to explore and experience on their own. That's one of the amazing parts of study abroad, is that opportunity to be on your own, to be independent, to interact with the local people, and overcome your own challenges. And we can't plan for that other than to leave space for students to have those opportunities. I think we talked earlier about planning time for students to be able to rest and recover. Planning time for students to be able to do their schoolwork. This is a class. And they do, you know, in Walking in Florence, they keep a journal, and the students need time to write in their journals. And so they need the time to go explore, and then still have time to be able to write. One of the things that we do with Walking in Florence is we leave weekends open so that students can travel on their own. Florence is uniquely located geographically, 2 hours or so from Rome and 2 hours or so from Venice. And so students can really enrich their experiences through these opportunities to go to other cities. So it is really, really important that when you're planning, you leave space for the unplanned in your plans.
So the first time we went to Florence, I tried to explain how important it is that they are on time before we enter Uffizi Gallery. Like you can wait a whole year to enter Uffizi Gallery. It's so important. It's more important than anything they can imagine in that trip. Right? But then I didn't realize that they were so worried to be there on time so we don't miss our entry ticket, because that's it. Then next summer maybe, right? That they will come without eating breakfast. You know how you feel after 1 hour in a museum. You need to sit down, everything spins. Uffizi Gallery is stuffy, hot, crowded. You cannot carry water with you. And after an hour they're done. But how am I going to run with them through Uffizi Gallery to show them all masterpieces in 1 hour, right? So I failed the first year. The second year, I thought, okay, how can I make that more successful? We'll go twice. No, we don't have a budget for 2 tickets. So now we eat breakfast together. We meet at our place. We cook protein breakfast, eggs and milk and coffee, and they drink water. And then we have a break, and we have some 10-euro sandwich in Uffizi Gallery, right? and then we continue, and we prepare them. This is the day we have to. So it's working. But I think one challenging thing is, how can I know the students better before I leave with them? Because I know my students, you know your students, but as you said, we have nursing students, we have students from all over the campus. And is there any way that I know a little bit more about the students so I can anticipate crises, conflicts, sickness?
I think my biggest rookie mistake, similar to the Walking in Florence, was that I wasn't prepared for students' inability to not walk long distances. I'm twice their age, and they walk really slow. And we ended up having to, so all the cities that we go to, basically Helsinki is the biggest, so most cities are less than 1 million people. And I was like, oh, we'll walk everywhere, it'll be totally fine. I ended up having to adapt, and we didn't take taxis because we couldn't afford that on my shoestring budget, but we would take trams and like the metro and things like that. So I was surprised that they weren't able to walk long distances and that they weren't able to walk on cobblestones. The students were like, I've never walked on cobblestones before. So, which was surprising. Also their inability to pack well. So I ended up having to, again, I'm twice their age, carry people's luggage because they didn't pack well. So I am going to monitor. I had them show me their suitcase, but I didn't think they would bring a suitcase and then a giant, like 60-pound backpack too, that we ended up having to leave with my host parents in Latvia because you couldn't carry it. Because again, it's 3 weeks. So I think next time I'm definitely gonna monitor like carry-on and luggage. You might see us in spring walking. I think we're gonna walk the entire distance with a full suitcase to see if they can do it. Because if you can't bring your suitcase on the cobblestones here in front of Milliken, then you need to pack lighter. And then the broad daylight, so it is broad daylight in the Baltic states in the summer. It gets dark 1 hour a day, and I told them all, bring a face mask if you can't sleep in broad daylight, and they didn't believe me. So I'm gonna bring extra face masks because otherwise you can't sleep when it's bright daylight out at 1 o'clock in the morning. So those are kind of, but again, those are planning things, and you live and learn and plan better next time and improve your trip. And hopefully the students pack lighter suitcases this time so I don't have to carry them.
You never put them on a marshrutka.
We rode a marshrutka, definitely. And because on the marshrutka you have to yell, stop on this corner. Again, I'm always yelling in Russian on my trip, so.
Do you guys have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
You made a comment about journaling, and so I'm wondering if you could just comment on like what kind of assignments, journaling, like what kind of actual rigor are you able to expect from this kind of trip, knowing that they're going to be tired and that you're going to be having lots of information and you've got culture shock, etc.
I'm delighted you asked that question, and this is where I might laugh some, because I tend to expect an unrealistic level of rigor out of students. This is probably my rookie mistake coming to Walking in Florence. That said, we do have them prepare in advance by reading a book about Florence so they can see someone else's interpretation of it or experience of it. Usually it's a work of fiction. While they're there, they are expected to present on a piece of artwork, an object, which maybe Marilla can tell us more about that. That creates a peer learning opportunity and a peer learning pedagogy where they take responsibility for their course. They have a share in the success of it. And so that reinforces rigor. The journaling reminds them that they're taking a course, but it also provides them with this extraordinary souvenir when they're home, to look back at their experiences and to remember. And then when they get home, they write a summative paper that really digs into the learning objectives. So Walking in Florence is coded as a global studies course, so this is our artifact that covers those learning objectives. So as they're coming back, and some of them experience reverse culture shock, and they're kind of processing their return home, they're able to work on their research papers, or work on their summative papers, where they're working on and drawing from not only their fellow students' presentations and their own presentation, but also that journal. And so all the assignments that we align for, or that we create for the class informs one another, but it's also not like they're turning things in every single day. We recognize that there's value in the experience, and that the students will get something out of everything they're doing, whether or not they're producing some sort of assessment for us.
Journals, careful. There are personal journals and school journals. So I do not want to read about the crashes in Florence and how things go in evening. So there will be personal journals. So if you want to keep a personal journals, and they do, right? If you want to keep it all in one journal, then you make a sign for me. This is personal, right? It's on the other side. You put a clip and you let me know. Because journals, we collect them on Friday nights, and we read them, grade them. The grades go on Moodle, and then they go back to them with comments. Right? It's an awesome drawing of David by Michelangelo, but what about a few facts about it, and what would you remember when you go back home and you look at this, right? So next time, hopefully we are looking for these things and no notes. Did they add that? Did they? So they know that that's serious. So that's about journals. So we collect them, we give them back, right, so they can write more. And presentations, the list of artworks, they see them before we go. They read about the artwork, they have to post it on Moodle. They're done with the research before we get there. And I tell them that. Do you want to sit in your room in a gorgeous evening in Florence and do research on your presentation when you are there? Or do you want to walk around the fountains and eat an ice cream? Because then you are in charge of that day. So if you fail to present, we just sit there and look at you, and you're not there. You're part of the syllabus. So they like that pressure afterwards, right? But back not during, right? But they enjoy it. So that there is work that is done before we leave, a little bit, because there you want them to walk around and eat and.
So I stole and I credited you in my syllabus. I don't know if I showed you that, the presentations. So I pick monuments, right, or statues in different cities, and then the students also have to present on that. And I loved that idea because they see how hard it is to tell, to lecture to everyone else about the artifact. right? And many times they had their notes there, so they would have it on their cell phone or print it out, right? So they kind of learned that it is difficult to be a tour guide, especially on a busy street when lots of people are coming and going. So I really like that idea. And then and I do the papers before and after, and I do the journaling too. And I do like scavenger hunts in some of the big palaces or museums that we go to. And so I ask them, basic questions about it, and then they have to go around and figure it out. Again, for me, because I've been going to the region that I go to for more than 20 years now, because I'm super old, I know the museums and the places that they go, and so that's fun. So they go in with like a piece of paper and a pencil and like have to find all these answers at the different like history museum or at the palace or whatever that we go to. So, but yeah, definitely the presentation. If you do it, I would recommend doing the presentations because I thought that was a genius idea, which is why I borrowed it from you.
Well, one thing that we did with the journals between the first and the second year that I was involved with Walking in Florence is the first year we left it very open, and students sometimes struggled with what to write about. And so the second year we provided them with some suggestions about what to write about. We gave them some prompts. Sometimes we prepared images of the objects that we were going to go see that day or at that particular site. And we would give them kind of a little bit of an introduction before we got there so they could take notes and take those pictures into their journals and then have something to work off of as they were reflecting. I think it's something that we kind of take for granted, that we have to teach our students how to reflect. They don't necessarily come into the class knowing how to reflect or what to reflect on. And so insofar as we want certain kinds of content in the journal, we try to provide them with some prompts. What was your experience here? How do these two artworks compare? What are your thoughts? Or how have your thoughts changed over time? That sort of thing.
I will say that you want to make sure that you are counting your time on an excursion, at a site visit, going through a castle in the Uffizi. Count that as part of your contact hours, right? I mean, and it is perfectly fine to set up as part of the syllabus a kind of a professional and participation grade where you're expecting them to behave a certain way, to be on time, to not just go sit at the at the food court and to actually do a certain amount of interacting with whatever that you've paid their admission to get into. But depending on where you're going and how it's working, you may have a block of time where you're all locked together on transportation. So I think Laura's left now, but when we do the Italy Urbana piece, there's often a 2-hour bus ride, for us to get to Florence, and on the way home, that's a great time for you to sit and have a 30-minute discussion with the students to count as discussion-based assignment, to kind of wrap up, to get that reflection going, especially if you want them to write about it later. And then, you talk with them for that amount of time, and then you go back and, sit in your own seat and sleep for the other 90 minutes. But that idea that there is that kind of locked in downtime during travel, and it's a good time to get some of that out so that when you are on the ground, they can do the nice evening with the gelato.
What everybody else said. But also I would just add 2 other things. I think a mix of both formal and informal assignments really works. And whether that's a reflection or a response or some kind of guided discussion, it helped. I'm thinking of the Scandinavia trip, it helped that we got, like you guys said, the heavy lifting, the heavier papers out of the way before we left. Because, and again, the circumstances were different, but when we came back, we were supposed to then do the summative paper. COVID changed all that, but we improvised. The other thing I would also say, and this is kind of what Carrie is saying, never underestimate how much they're learning just by walking down the street. England is not that different from America, but in England, you walk down the street and you've heard on one block 12 different languages, people wearing, clothing, women in full, burqas and niqabs. So just by showing up and paying attention, they're learning a tremendous amount. And sometimes that doesn't even get in the journal, but it comes out in discussion, it comes out in class discussion. And so, contact is always happening. And at the same time, but then I'll also say, yeah, downtime is important too. It's really important to just let them go, whether they want to stay home and Netflix or go to the pub because they can drink. It's great. It's really important for them to figure out how to travel on their own. So that's what I would ask.
Basic question. Say a couple of profs want to go to, I don't know, Peru. How many students do we need if we both want to go and not use our own money?
So what's your average airfare to Peru? What are you thinking about for airfare?
Let's plan for 1,500.
1,500. So if you want to go, that's $3,000. You've got whatever food you want to cover and your lodging. And so, I mean, I'm guessing you're looking at least 12 students to easily divide that up. I mean, 12 or more to divide that cost up, because if you're going, you know, I don't know, if you're thinking you're going to go for 2 weeks, and you have to think about what that nightly cost is in the hotel, and I'm guessing you'd like to have your own rooms and not bunk up together, but I could be wrong. You know, those are the kind of things, you know, you've got to keep that in mind. So again, you know, some of us snore more than others. So again, there's a QR code on that sheet over there that'll take you to that budget template, and it'll allow you to like drop some of those numbers in experimentally and see, oh, this is, you know, if we only had 8, oh my God, we'd have to charge the students $7,000, and it's probably too high of a price point. So does that?
So my trip was 2,200, and I ended up I took 6, and we had so much money left over because we stay in hostels and take local transportation that used to be like $10, $15. So I ended up having to buy them meals for the last 2 weeks of the program, which was great, but yeah, I ended up over budgeting, so I raised my trip to like 2,500 now, and I'm bringing a second faculty, and I could do it with 6 because I'm the cheapest person ever. But I prefer 8, and we have 8 for the trip. So I think it really depends on, like, I stay in hostels that are $20 a night. They all room together, right? I also, the faculty member that is coming with me, we are rooming together because she's coming on my trip. And I was like, if you want to come on my trip, we have to room together. Because otherwise I have to charge the students more, and then to me that's a huge impediment. We'll see. You can ask me next year if I made the right decision on that one. But yeah, so we'll see. And I mean, that's the thing. And I also go to cities where I end up staying with my friends on their couch, which saves us money. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I wouldn't recommend doing the Laura Dean super cheap method, but I think that you could make it so that you could take 8 students. And one thing I also do too is I give them an option that they can buy their own airfare. So I have an option that I buy their airfare and we travel together, and then other students, like I had a student go to Germany and France after the program, and they bought their own plane tickets. So when I bought the tickets, there were 4 students and me that I bought the tickets for, and then 2 bought their own tickets. So you can kind of, you know, do that. But yeah, I mean, airfare is going to be your biggest expense. And just keep in mind that, like, yeah, I mean, I tell the students I buy them 2 meals in 3 weeks, and if we have leftover money, I buy them more. So I think making that expectation that you're not going to buy a lot for them, and then being able to, is always better than telling them that they don't need money and then they actually do need much more money. So, but again, I'm the cheapest person, so I don't know if mine is the best model. But I'll send you my budget if you want to look at how cheap I truly am.
We believe you. Yeah, I'm more of the princess and the pea.
I stay in youth hostels and have a shared bathroom with them, so which is super fun.
I'll be on this end.
Yeah, no, as a total introvert, if I don't have my room, my own room to myself, at the end of the, I will not be a happy traveler.
I think there is a middle ground. We have to find a middle ground.
One more thing I wanted to mention is that because so many of the students haven't done much traveling when you first travel, do not be surprised if they are like at your heels for the first 3 days, but then at the end of the trip you can't find them, because they're comfortable and they're brave and they're off on their own. And so you might want to design course pieces around that idea that at the beginning they are going to want to be with the group and with you because they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on and where they are. But later on, you know, again, they will feel much more comfortable, braver, and they will wander much further. So, did you have a question?
Did you hear any complaints or suggestions about what the minimum, you know, accommodation they expect? Because in Peru, we have a variety of accommodation from very fancy all the way to the hostels. So what would be your advice in that way?
So we stayed, so basically the students preferred the hostels, which I was like, really? Because we stayed basically on the Russian border at the like swankiest hotel, which was like $40 a night, and like had a spa and a sauna. And they were like, yeah, this sucks. We'd rather be in a hostel, because they get to meet other people that are traveling in hostels. The hostel, you can pay them to do their laundry, which is awesome. And usually most hostels either come with a free shot or a beer when you enter them, or there is a bar attached, and so they really liked that aspect of it. So yeah, so that's the thing. And again, like I'm taking a different group this summer. We will see, maybe they would want to, you know, not stay in the hostels anymore. But yeah, I asked the students like, which one did you prefer? And they all preferred staying in the hostels. They didn't prefer the nights in Estonia when I made all 6 of them sleep in the same room. So I think I probably won't do that again. But
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, those are things attached to the hostels or the. But what about the bed, the water?
Nope, no
temperature?
complaints.
No.
No, I mean, I was staying there with them, so how can they complain when I'm like twice their age and we have to share a bathroom?
That's why they didn't complain.
But you guys have had complaints about the no air conditioning, right?
Well, the complaints were that, you know, they wanted the room really cold, and that was not possible because there's the law. You cannot, I mean, the air conditioner will stop. You cannot go over, will just click and stop. So they had to learn. You cover the windows during the day, close the windows. You open the windows when the sun goes down, open the windows and the air will come in, air the room, it gets cool at night, and you start over the next day. So it was a little bit of learning curve, but I would say that a great exercise was to give them the map the first day we got there, and then ask them, take me to this, take me there, and they will get lost. We'll just follow the student, and they get really fast over the fear of getting lost. And
If you're thinking budget-wise, at anything over $3,500, students are usually not interested unless it's a summer program that's longer. If it's a 1 week or 2 week program, $3,500 is usually the most they're gonna pay. Anything else? Yes, very, very helpful. Thank you guys.